Thank you. So this evening's debate will be delivered in 3 segments. So the first segment will consist of opening statements from our candidates. The second segment will consist of 4 questions that will be posed to all candidates. The third and final segment will give all candidates an opportunity to conclude the debate and address any issues they feel they didn't have the time to address during the rest of the debate. We will provide an explanation of each segment prior to that start of the segment. So first, let's set some guidelines before we get things started. We ask each candidate to A, respect the clock. So we will have a timer to help you. And please deliver your statements and responses in the time provided. Secondly, make it easy for the audience to listen. Please don't interrupt other candidates when they are speaking. Third, we'd like candidates to stay issues focused, so please avoid any personal references or criticism directed specifically at your fellow candidates. We want to hear your position on the issues tonight. And finally, let the audience decide. So we ask that supporters leave their signs outside, and the audience is welcome to applaud if they wish, but any other interruptions from audience members will not be allowed.
So let's start with our first segment, the opening statements. Candidates will be given 1 minute to introduce themselves and to share their thoughts on the biggest issue currently faced post-secondary education institutions and our students. We will address some of them in the subsequent questions and give you the opportunity to tell us about your proposed solutions. The candidates will answer this question in alphabetical order, which is also how they are seated today. So starting from Len Weber.
Sure, testing. You can hear me all? Hi everyone, my name is Len Weber and I'm the Conservative candidate here in this election for Calgary Confederation. I am seeking re-election. I have been the MP here for 4 years, 4 challenging years as an opposition member, having to put up with a lot of the difficult situations that are being put in place by the Liberal government, which has devastated our province and our country. So I'm hoping this time round that the Conservative Party of Canada will become the government and that we will be able to reverse a number of items that the Liberal Party and Justin Trudeau has implemented to devastate Alberta. To me, my key message here today, it's the economy. If we have a vibrant and strong economy, we can do so much in other areas such as healthcare, areas such as education, the climate. All these areas all are determined by the economy. If we have a strong economy, we can invest a lot of money into these areas.
Thank you. We're going to move on with Natalie.
Hello. Hi, everyone. My name's Natalie. I'm the Green Party candidate in the riding of Calgary Confederation. This is my second time running in the riding. I grew up in Calgary. I went to school here. I'm raising my family here. We own a home here. I'm very deeply invested in the city of Calgary and concerned about the future of the city and feel that we need to be really forward-looking and have a vision for Canada. Running for the Greens, you may know that support for the Greens has been rising across Canada for some time now, and I think this is because we have a very complete platform that is focused on impactful climate action, dealing with issues related to poverty and health, relationships with Indigenous people. We have a very complete platform. It's very deeply researched, and it's very positive, constructive, and innovative, and gives an alternative to the status quo.
Thank you. Now Jordan Stein.
Hello? Yeah, you can hear me? So my name's Jordan Stein. I'm the Liberal candidate in this election. And I just want to thank everyone for coming here today and my worthy opponents and everyone for organizing this. And we're celebrating on this democratic opportunity on Treaty 7 land, so thank you. I'm really excited to be here. I grew up in this city, and I'm like you. I'm anxious about our future. What's Calgary going to look like in 30 years? What kind of jobs are we going to have to be able to put roofs over our heads? Are we going to have clean air to breathe? These are things that I think are on all of our minds, and me too. I grew up here. I've seen booms and busts. I want to see a thriving economy, but I want to make sure that we're reaching our climate targets. And this seems like a difficult path to be walking, but it's the path that the Liberal Party is walking. And I really want to make sure that when you're voting for someone to really champion this city, to be standing up for the strides that we're already taking, and to make sure that we have what we need to be able to play our part in reaching our climate targets. So Calgary really needs a champion, and thank you.
Thank you. Now with Kevan Hunter.
Hello, everyone, and thanks again to the organizers for the SU and the GSA for putting this on, and all of you for being here. My name's Kevan Hunter. I'm with the Marxist Leninist Party of Canada. A bit about myself, I'm a proud teacher. I've been a Calgary public school teacher for about 11 years, lived in Alberta all my life. I think the biggest problem and the biggest issue facing all of us is the lack of empowerment in these elections and in the decisions that are made about the economy and everything. So in these elections, the Marxist-Leninist Party is continuing to do its work to organize Canadians for democratic renewal, to change the direction of the economy, and to establish an anti-war government. And our motto is empower yourself now.
Thank you. Now with Colin Korol.
Hello, is this on?
Yes.
So I've lived in Calgary since 1982, and I've been living in this riding for the last 20 years. I went to SAIT. I was a film school grad, so when I was done, I needed a real job. So I went to work with Alberta Health Services and started as a service worker and worked my way up to a working leader of distribution. And I went to Athabasca University, enrolled in a BPA program for communications, studied English, communications, political science, but did not expect to be up here even a few months ago running for party. But the People's Party is a platform that I really believe in, and I feel that Canada, and particularly Calgary in the West, has been kind of left behind. You know, we have to fix the equalization formula, and we have to look at different ways to improve our economy out west and to look after the people in this city who I feel have been left behind.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, candidates. Now let's move on to the second segment of our debate here tonight, the rest of our questions. So in the interest of time, candidates will have 45 seconds to answer questions. And the first question is on student aid and affordability. So students understand that education is expensive and that they need to pay their share of this through tuition. Additionally, the cost of living is increasing, including bills, rent, and other expenses. Student aid in the form of grants, scholarships, and bursaries can help alleviate some of this burden. However, more non-repayable grants are needed. So if elected, how will you and your party ensure students are financially supported throughout their degree? And so for this, with the rotating, we will start with Natalie.
Thank you. Something that distinguishes the Green Party from the others is that we want to eliminate tuition to post-secondary institutions, colleges, universities. We believe that education is a public good and that students should not have to pay for it. And this is the same in many, many countries across the world, where we need to eliminate all barriers to students going to university and not put them in debt. The average debt right now for students leaving university is $26,000. It's very difficult to pay it back. It propagates cycles of poverty, and it also is even a higher rate, a higher barrier to Indigenous students. So eliminate post-secondary. We want to increase funding to the 3 granting agencies and inject $10 billion in immediately to post-secondary.
Thank you. Next we have Jordan Stein.
So I deeply value post-secondary education, and I really get this issue. I'm actually still paying my student loan, so I really understand what you guys are facing. And I really fundamentally believe that education in Canada should be affordable and accessible, and the grants that we're talking about should be targeted to the students that really need an advantage and really need that opportunity. So the Liberal Party has committed to increasing non-repayable grants by 40%. This will help 470,000 low and middle income students across Canada access money that they need to be able to pay tuition. They've also increased the grace period from 6 months to 2 years and made it so that you're not accumulating interest or having to pay if you're not making up to $35,000 per year or until your first child is 5 years old. I'm out of time, but there's more.
Perfect, thank you. Then next we have Kevan Hunter.
Education is a right, and it belongs to all of you by virtue of your being human. And the issue for us is, how do we provide that right with a guarantee? We think education can be free, universal, free, post-secondary education. The first issue there is a question of outlook. The way it's seen these days, students are being treated as if they're customers, and that's the first problem we have to overcome. You are creating immense value. Corporations and the companies in Calgary cannot exist without this institution, and yet they don't want to pay their fair share. They don't want to do their part to ensure the right to education.
Thank you. Next we have Colin Korol.
Well, I think that education in Canada, we're very fortunate in that it's a lot more affordable than other countries, but there are simple tax measures that our party will take to make things a little bit more affordable, like raising the personal exemption. But I think in a lot of ways too, we've got to start looking at how we're going to improve the skilled workers in our country. And right now, a lot of the international students are being denied permits to participate in work programs and co-ops. And I think that our party really needs to work with industry to get them placed in areas so that they have a job when they're done.
Perfect, thank you. And now Len Weber.
Free education, university, post-secondary, that's what some of my colleagues here are proposing. I question how that will be paid for. It would be paid through your taxes. A solution would be to, again, talk about the economy and get our economy revitalized again and get it going so that more money is ending up in our government coffers to invest in areas such as students' education, tuitions, more grants, more availability of students to get into university. That is the way that we can bring down the cost of education to the students, and that is to have a vibrant economy.
Thank you.
Thanks for those answers. And next, we want to talk a little bit about funding, innovation, and research. So universities play a critical role in our society. They are the centers of discovery, innovation, and the birthplace of new ideas, and also a venue for free and rigorous debate. University and their students are drivers of research and development that provide significant societal, industrial, and economic benefits through the training of high-qualified individuals, development of new ideas, transfer of knowledge, and commercialization of inventions and discoveries. So how will you support Canada's researchers? And for this one, we're going to start with Jordan's team.
Okay. So science, innovation, and research is really, really important for the future of this country, and especially when it comes to addressing the problems that we're facing. The Liberals have really put their money where their mouth is with this one. They've they've given $4 billion for science. That includes $1.5 billion for just labs and facilities, including funding for the new library here at U of C. They're also investing heavily in skills retraining and innovation. Some of this money has gone to SAIT to create the Green Building Technologies program, as well as the Center for Innovation and Unmanned Machines. They've also announced a new fund to help with tech for farmers and agriculture. And they've also invested heavily in innovation after graduation, so helping entrepreneurs and new grads address the needs of the market through clean resource innovation. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you. Now with Kevan Hunter.
I want to say you guys did a fantastic job with that question. The way that you pointed out that research and innovation is adding value and it's a tremendous asset to society. And, I think what the university should be doing, and students should advocate for this, is a full accounting of that value that's created. So all of the research that's being done at this university, what is it and who's benefiting from it? Who's economically benefiting from it? And I think we'll find out that the public is paying for all sorts of amazing research to happen, which is then going to enrich private interests. And those private interests need to pay for it.
Thank you. Now with Colin Korol.
Well, there's a lot of talk about how strong the economy is in Canada right now, but it can always be better. And, no matter how much the GDP may or not be increasing every year, productivity and investment are down. And the way to fix that is to create new industries and to encourage more entrepreneurship and research. And I think the government has an absolute reason to fund research that will lead to new industries and expand our economy and make Canada a richer, more prosperous place.
Thank you. Len Weber.
Research and innovation, absolutely, that's vital in this country, and we need to continue to do that. But the question is, how do we pay for it? And again, back to my point, and this is a point I'm going to say over and over again here tonight. The fact that we are in a struggling economy right now, an economy where our oil industry has been devastated in this province. How are we going to pay for research and development and innovation? We have to fix this economy. We got to get our oil to tidewater in order to get royalties put back into our coffers so that we can pay for research and innovation, which is vital for this economy.
Thank you. Natalie.
Thanks for the question. It's interesting to hear that Mr. Weber thinks that research and innovation is important because under the Conservatives at Harper, he cut that funding to research grants. Cut it. So that doesn't make much sense to me. The Liberals put some money back, but not all of it, and they didn't put it back into student-led research, which is really critical. That money needs to be reallocated back into student-led research. We don't have money to fund PhD programs, so a lot of people who would be qualified and are eager to do PhDs don't have the money to do it and simply don't. So we're losing out on a lot of people who could be contributing to science and innovation in Canada.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for those answers. So the next question is on climate change. So climate change policy is at the forefront of this federal election. Many youth are taking to the streets to show their concerns over the fires, floods, and storms of recent years that have made climate change something more than a theoretical threat. This is a complex topic for Canada, a country that relies heavily on the oil and gas sector. So how would your party plan to address climate change? And we will start with Kevan Hunter.
Climate change, definitely one of the most important things, and it connects to the issue of what is the direction of the economy. And there are some parties that think that the direction of the economy should be the export of raw resources, unprocessed, that exports should be increased of energy, and that's not the way to go. We can build a different economy, and I think the workers in Alberta and the whole country want a new direction. They want to change the direction of the economy so that we have an economy that's aimed at meeting the needs of the people and not maximum profit for a select few. And if we do that, then the issues facing Mother Earth can be addressed.
Sorry, perfect, thank you. And next we have Colin Korol.
Well, I think we need to, in a province like Alberta that's so resource intensive and our economy is based on that, there are a lot of calls to radically transform our economy into one that's based on alternative sources. I think to do that, you have to keep money and revenue coming into the province, to develop these new technologies and to say that there is a urgency to throw a whole industry under the bus just to use as a crutch to build an industry and transform our way of living is not realistic or possible.
Thank you. Next we have Len Weber.
Climate change is happening and it is urgent and we need to address the issue, absolutely. My colleagues over here feel that We should shut down our oil industry, shut down every aspect of resources to go into our government coffers in order to eliminate the greenhouse gases here in Canada, which account for 2% of all greenhouse gases in the world. Our oil sands alone contribute 0.1% of all greenhouse gases in the world. We are better off to invest in green technology through the money that we're making through the oil industry, to invest in research and development, to develop green technology in order to enhance our environment in the future.
Thank you. Next we have Natalie Odd.
I think everyone understands what we need to do as a transition. Climate change is happening, it's human caused, and we are running out of time to do something about it. There are very hard targets that we have to meet that our conservative and liberal governments have blown through, and our window of time to do something about this is closing. My children need me to do something about this, and so do yours. So we need to stop burning fossil fuel. There's no way around it. Our per capita emissions in Canada are extremely high. We're a wealthy nation, and we have the capability, the technology, the education to do something about this, and it is on us to do this now. We don't have enough time to waste. We've had decades to do it. So those who have had the chance to do it and let the opportunity go by when we had wealth and opportunity are now saying, well, wait a second, it's hard times. Well, we should have been doing this a long time ago, and we have to start yesterday.
Next we have Jordan Stein.
Yeah, so I hear a lot about that we feel like we have to choose between the economy and the environment. And I will tell you that I believe fundamentally, and we're proving this, that we actually can and we have to address both. Here's how they're doing it. The Liberals have re-engineered the economy to make people pay for pollution. This cannot be understated. And what this is doing is also stimulating the innovation and the technology that we will need to reach our Paris targets. They've also put the ambitious target of a net zero country by 2050 and put in 5-year milestones to not just say we're going to get there, but to actually get us there. They're putting a ban on plastics, going to plant 2 billion trees, and all of these things will help us not just meet, but exceed our Paris climate targets. This is a real plan. We have to transition, but we need to make sure we're supporting Alberta in order to be able to thrive in that net zero future.
Thank you for the answers. The last question is about internationalization. So international students are growing part of the university, are a growing part of the university community. Here at the University of Calgary, we have a goal of having international students make up 10% of our undergraduate students and 25% of our graduate students. International students also add value to our institutions by contributing diverse perspectives, experience, and ensuring that University of Calgary graduates are prepared to thrive in a globalized world. However, they also face increased hardships as they pay higher tuition and fees than domestic students, and they often have difficulty finding employment, housing, both during and after they graduate. What will your party do to ensure that international students are adequately supported during and after their time in Canadian post-secondary institutions? And for this one, we're going to start with Kevan Hunter.
We should eliminate...
I'm sorry, I made a mistake with the starting person, so we should start with Colin Korol. I'm sorry, I apologize.
So international students are very important to our economy, and knowing what they suffer through financially and going through school, their living conditions, their inability to work, I think those all need to be addressed, and it's in Canada's interest to get them placed in work programs and co-ops and to help support them and allow them to integrate properly into Canada. It's not fun when you don't have any money and you're suffering and you're not thinking about anything, you're thinking about everything other than school. So I think Canada and our government has a role to play in helping these students get work and financially support them.
Thank you. Len Weber.
Absolutely agree with you 100%. Our international students are vital to not only our economy here, but also to student life in every university. International students can share so much with students around Canada, with their experience, with what they've been through in their lives, coming here to learn English, to learn all aspects of Canadian life in order to bring that back home, to share that with their families. And what it does is it develops relationships between Canadians and foreign students who can then go on down the road, and we could network with these young individuals who are in the working world in order to be able to do things like share our economy, to share foreign trade with each other.
Thank you. Natalie.
Okay, thanks. I was very moved meeting with the Students Association members of SAIT and U of C and their concern for foreign students, and how important they feel that those young people are to have here, and how great they are for our culture, and academic sharing and exchange is just fantastic. It seems to me that they have really, the Students Association has really clearly delineated some ways to fix this problem, and some of them are legislative. Harper put in legislation that made it very difficult for foreign students to get assistance with legal and immigration issues. That should be fixed. We shouldn't be waiting around for that. They should be having access to job placements. That should be fixed. Why are we waiting around for that? They're going to the food bank. They're hungry. I mean, there are things that we can fix very quickly if we have a will to do that. So whoever is in charge needs to move on it now.
Thank you. Jordan Stein.
Yeah, so international students, of course, are really important to helping Canada tackle these complex global issues that we're facing. I know about this a lot from meeting with the students' associations, but also at home. I'm engaged to an immigrant whose cousin is currently just graduated from SAIT and is applying for a work permit. So I really get this issue. And from what I heard from the Students' Association is that we really need someone to be pushing for more supports in the university to help them navigate the immigration process. The Liberals have eliminated fees for immigrants that are applying with all the qualifications that they need. And there's also a pilot program in Atlantic Canada that will help work with municipalities and chambers of commerce to help them get those co-op and opportunities that they need. But we need someone in Calgary to be fighting for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now with Kevan Hunter.
We should immediately eliminate all financial incentives for the university to have international students. They shouldn't be used as a way to bring more revenue into a university which is desperate for increased revenue. We should fully fund the university so that it meets its needs. And building upon what Natalie said, it sounds like the people that are close to the ground, the Students' Union, the Graduate Students' Association, you have the solutions. And the issue is, in this election and in every election, how we're being told to entrust our fate to a political party. Which party can we trust? When what needs to happen is, all those who are engaged in fighting need to speak in their own name.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, candidates, for your insightful responses. So we are now at our third and final segment, where each candidate will be given 3 minutes to give us their concluding remarks and address any issues they feel they didn't have time to address in the rest of their debate. So for this, we will rotate back to Len Weber.
Okay, well, thank you, and thank you all again for being here today, and to my colleagues here who are fighting for this position as MP in this riding. I do have to reiterate one more time how important our economy is and how important our oil patch is, and to be able to bring it back to the way it was. It has been decimated by the Liberal government, Justin Trudeau, and we need to reverse everything that he has done there. We need those dollars, my friends, in order to pay for all the promises that the Green Party and that the Liberals and that these other parties want to implement. How else are we going to pay for this? They have the solution. The solution is to tax you to death. To tax you to death with jobs that many of you will probably have difficulty getting once you graduate, because there won't be any in this province when our oil industry is decimated. So I would say everything is wonderful what you're saying. Eliminate as much greenhouse gases as you possibly can. That is important. The Conservatives also want to talk about raw sewage that is being dumped into our waterways throughout this country. Montreal just had Greta there doing a big protest on our environment and demanding action. Yet the government, the mayor of Montreal, allows raw sewage to be dumped into the waters. This is happening also in Victoria. We as a Conservative Party have made a commitment to building throughout this country water treatment facilities so that it would eliminate any raw sewage that come into our waterways. That is something that we have to do with monies that are being brought into our coffers again with our economic engine here in Alberta, our oil sands. And with those monies coming in, we can do so much more. Again, education, bring down your cost of education. I find it frustrating how these Green Party individuals talk about the environment. It is important to talk about the environment, but the hypocrisy that is occurring is startling. They will go out, they will travel around the world in their jet engines and in their airplanes. They will drive their automobiles, they will use the roadways, yet they want to stop all that. So enjoy riding your bicycles around, if that's what you'd like in the future. But it's not going to happen, I'm sorry, because we are better than that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I will remind everybody that there will be no heckling or sort of any negative comments from either the candidates or the audience. So please, let's keep this a respectful dialogue. Next, we have Natalie Odd.
It's the turn of the green individual. First of all, I just want to say that it's very important to the Greens that we're extremely respectful at all times, and that that all MPs should be respectful in the House of Commons and have respectable discourse so that we can actually focus on the issues. I'm very glad that Mr. Weber asked where we're going to get the money to pay for school, because right now we need to completely reform our tax system. It hasn't been reformed in 40 to 50 years. It's like between the Liberals and Conservatives, a battle of tax tweaks. But what we really need is full reforms so that we have a fair tax system. There are billions of dollars in tax loopholes for the wealthy, offshore tax havens, corporations getting unfair write-offs. Our corporate tax is at 15%, while the US is at 21%. We are just letting billions and billions flow out of our coffers that are not serving Canadians. So there's a lot of money that can be put back into the system for social services. We need to have a social contract. Our government needs to have a social contract with the people so that you can provide the right services that everyone can participate to their greatest potential in our society in a safe and secure way. So Mr. Weber is talking about we need to build the economy so that we have money to pay for these things. Well, what about when we did have a booming economy? We still had high rates of poverty. They pulled out of housing strategy. They weren't lifting the cap off of funding for post-secondary for Indigenous peoples, which we have an obligation to do. What about universal childcare and pharmacare? What about dental services? So when the economy is booming, supposedly this is all going to come to us. Well, it didn't. It didn't, and we're in a very bad position now, and we need to transform our economy. Mr. Rowe would have us go back 50 years. It's not happening. We have to face reality, face the future, and transform our economy in something healthy, constructive, and positive, because the rest of the world is moving on. We will have a petrochemical industry, but we don't need to be burning fossil fuels. We should not be burning fossil fuels for energy when we have all other kinds of energy right here in Alberta. We have huge potential for geothermal in these thousands of abandoned oil wells, wind and solar. Why don't we do it? What is stopping us? We have perverse subsidies funding oil and gas. We need to eliminate those and electrify our power system across Canada, get rail going again. Let's move into the modern era, into the 21st century, and we can make this positive and exciting. When we eliminate tuition for post-secondary school, every young person will be able to take part in this. And PhD students, let's go to town on this, guys. Let's make this happen. Let's not let old, entrenched governments that are weighed down in old ideologies and old, out-of-date ideas, they're weighing us down, right? So the Greens are the new party of the future.
That concludes the 3 minutes. Thank you. So next we'll go on to Jordan Stein.
Okay, thank you all so much for this opportunity to be able to share our ideas. This has been a very interesting conversation. I have knocked on tens of thousands of doors in this city, both as a candidate for Rachel Notley in the provincial election and as your Liberal candidate. And I start every single conversation with the same question: what's important for you? And I ask this question because politics is not just about policies or parties or platforms, it's about people. And it's a real opportunity to actually help people and to strengthen our communities. Calgary is facing some enormous challenges in the future. We have to take seriously the fact that the planet's temperature is rising, and we have to take climate change seriously. But we also are dependent on a resource-rich economy. But taking action on one or the other, or choosing one or the other, is a false political dichotomy. We actually have to do both. The Liberals are doing this. They've put a price on pollution. They have re-engineered the economy to make sure that pollution is no longer free. They have committed to a transition, and they're doing it in a way that doesn't leave Alberta behind. And they are putting the infrastructure dollars in place to make sure that we can transition. Let's remember, though, that in the most recent provincial elections, we have seen Conservative governments in the most populated province in this country and the most carbon-intensive province in this country both elect leaders who are actively working to undermine the progress that we've made to reach our global climate targets. And you know what? I appreciate their concern, because we have seen what losing investment dollars does to our communities. It's hurt Calgary, and I know that. We've been through a tough few years. But where is this money going? It's not just it's like consumers around the world are demanding low carbon alternatives. And this is not just bike riding Greens or protesters that I meet on Fridays at the footsteps of City Hall. This is 130 of the world's largest banks are pulling $47 trillion out of fossil fuel industries because the UN has backed these climate policies. So there's no more business as usual in this province, and we can't afford to bury our heads in the oil sands. We have the most to lose in Alberta, but we also have the biggest part to play in reaching our climate targets. Canada has the highest emissions per capita in the world, and Alberta, we have the 4 times the national average for climate emissions. We have a huge role to play in reaching our climate targets, but we also have assets, infrastructure, incredible talent, and with innovative solutions that Natalie mentioned some of them, but there are more to come, and that we need more investment in those. We can adapt, and we can have a thriving economy in a net zero future. And the reality is, if we can figure this out here in Alberta, how many other countries are going to be lining up to follow in our footsteps? We need to trigger and inspire the global mobilization that we need to reach our climate targets. So we need a champion to stand up for our city in Ottawa, and I'm not just here to ask you for your vote. I'm asking you to consider being a part of something bigger.
That concludes your 3 minutes. And then next we have Kevin Hunter.
One thing that we haven't talked very much about tonight is Indigenous peoples in this country and reconciliation. And so I think it needs to be said that reconciliation means respecting Aboriginal Indigenous rights. And the Marxist-Leninist Party of Canada stands with the Indigenous people who are defenders of the land, who are stepping up to defend Mother Earth. We stand with them when they say no consent means no pipeline. You cannot build a pipeline without the consent of the Indigenous peoples whose lands it's going to cross. You need the people who hold title to unceded territory in BC. And we are not against a pipeline per se. We're taking issue with the fact that the debate is framed in such a way as, you know, yes to pipelines, or yes to the environment, or somehow we'll build a pipeline and increase export of raw resources and defend the environment at the same time. To add to that point about the environment, you know, it's become such an issue that we need to be really careful. You know, people are in the streets and the climate strikes all over the world and in Canada with amazing numbers of people. And so, like, obviously the political parties are responding to that. And, you know, it's a calculation what's going to, for all of these parties that are organized from the top down, very central, everything is a calculation what's going to get us elected. Once they're in power, the calculation is what's going to help us stay in power. Once they're elected, they all end up serving private interests. And there are a lot of private interests that see the need for a transition to a different economy and want to see how they can make maximum profit from that situation. So when we talk about, stimulating industry, we're talking about pay the rich schemes here. So that's something that we're really concerned about. The bottom line, like in this election, in every election, workers are, and youth and students, they're fighting for their demands, for the right to education, social programs, a bright future, a strong economy, day in, day out. And then when an election comes along, we're told to place our fate, to trust our fate to one political party. That's what we need to change. And so in this election, the Marxist-Leninist Party has published Renewal Update every day, which is bringing forward the concerns of working people and youth and students in this country.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we have Colin Korol.
Well, the reason I decided to run was for freedom and fairness. I think government has reached too far into all of our lives. They've taken too much of our money, and they've disempowered people from knowing how to spend it. And this extends into industry, our personal lives, our provincial relationships with each other through trade. And I feel that a government should really put the people first and put that ahead of special interest. There's too much of a history between the Liberals and Conservatives of pandering to specific groups, and it doesn't seem like any one party is reaching out to Canadians, individual Canadians, and treating them equally. They're reaching out to blocs. They don't look at us as people, they look at us as special interest groups. And I think that needs to change. I think we need to level the playing field, level the opportunities for people through taxation, and fix a lot of our social programs. I work in healthcare, and I see the wait times and the waste in administration. And people don't like to hear that there's a way of reforming certain things in our society that we hold sacred. We hold universal healthcare sacred, but we stand to lose it, like many other programs, because they're not sustainable. We can't continue to print money. We have to be responsible. We have to figure out a way to make things more efficient and affordable for everybody. And this extends to all facets of life. Whether you're buying a home, I know the Conservatives talked about increasing the mortgage rates, and you don't want to make things unaffordable by playing with the market, and that's the problem with the government. There's been too much interference in the free market, and it's cost Canadians dearly, through corporate interests and your bottom line every day. I see what's going on in Alberta, and I agree that one day we are going to have alternative sources of energy. We need that investment, but how are we going to get there? How are we going to make it realistic? We can only do that by keeping our country and our province prosperous and not kneecapping industry and standing up for equalization, keeping money in Alberta, and helping all Albertans prosper.
Thank you all for this very informative session and discussion. And I think that the importance of post-secondary to the country's future cannot be overstated. And it was nice to hear from all of you of what you think our future looks like. Let's give a round of applause to our candidates for taking part in our event this evening. Thank you.